Have you ever judged someone without knowing their story? Maybe you've walked past a janitor, a security guard, or a delivery worker and thought they were just another face in the background. But what if that person carried a hidden gift that could silence a room, move hearts, and even change lives? Tonight, I want to tell you the story of David Miller, a single father and janitor, who went from being invisible in the eyes of others to making even the most powerful man in the company shed tears with nothing but the touch of a piano. David Miller was in his late 40s, his face showing the lines of years filled with struggle and sacrifice. He worked nights as a janitor in a massive corporate office downtown. Every evening, as executives and employees in their sharp suits left the building, David would quietly sweep floors, polish the glass doors, and mop the endless marble hallways. His shoes were worn, his uniform faded, and his hands rough from hard work. To most people in the building, he was invisibly someone they passed by without even a second glance. But behind those tired eyes and weary steps lived a story of love, heartbreak, and resilience. David was a single father. Years earlier, his wife had passed away suddenly, leaving him alone to raise their only daughter, Emily. She was his world, the reason he woke up every morning, the reason he endured humiliation and exhaustion at work without complaint. Emily was 12, bright, and full of dreams. She wanted to become a musician someday, just like her father had once dreamed of being. You see, before life forced him into cleaning floors and emptying trash bins, David had been a pianist. Not a famous one, not even professional, but music was his passion. He used to play in small bars and at church events. He even wrote little lullabies for Emily when she was just a baby. But when tragedy struck, he locked that part of himself away, trading in piano keys for a mop handle to ensure Emily never went hungry. At the office, the employees barely noticed him. Some joked behind his back. Others ignored him altogether. But David never responded with bitterness. He simply worked hard, smiled softly when spoken to, and kept his world small. Yet, fate has a way of bringing the hidden into the light. One Friday evening, the company hosted a massive celebration in their grand hall. The CEO was there, along with top managers, executives, and staff. There was music, laughter, and champagne. In the corner of the room stood a beautiful grand piano, polished and shining under the lights. Most people treated it as decoration, but for David, every time he walked past it during his cleaning shifts, it tugged at his heart, reminding him of what he once loved. That night, some employees who had been drinking noticed David passing by with his mop and bucket. One of them smirked and said loudly, "Hey, Dave, why don't you play us something on the piano?" The crowd chuckled. It wasn't a genuine invitation, it was a joke. They expected him to be embarrassed, maybe refuse, maybe stumble with a few notes. But instead of walking away, David paused. He looked at the piano, then at the laughing faces, and then back again. For a moment, his heart raced. It had been years since his fingers touched real piano keys. But then he thought of Emilia, her laughter, her dreams, her belief in him, and he slowly walked toward the piano. The room grew quiet. Some people whispered, "Is he actually going to play?" The CEO leaned back in his chair, curious. David sat down, his rough hands trembling slightly as he touched the keys. At first, he just pressed a few notes, testing them, and in a broken bar he began to play. The sound that filled the room was not what anyone expected. It wasn't clumsy or hesitant. It was powerful. It was soulful. It was the sound of a man who had lived through heartbreak and carried the weight of sacrifice, yet still held on to beauty within his heart. The melody was haunting, delicate, and strong all at once. Every note carried the story of his story. The chatter stopped. Glasses were set down. People turned toward him, their expressions softening as the music washed over them. David closed his eyes as he played, lost in the music. He thought of his wife, of the nights he played lullabies for Emily, of the struggles that nearly broke him, and of the strength he found to keep going. For those few minutes, he wasn't a janitor. He wasn't invisible. He was simply a man speaking the truth of his soul through music. When the last note lingered in the air, there was silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from awkwardness, but the heavy, emotional silence that follows something too beautiful to immediately respond to. And then, Softly, the CEO began to clap. One by one, the entire room joined in, until the hall was filled with thunderous applause. Some wiped away tears. Others stood to give him a standing ovation. Even the CEO, a man known for his cold and calculating demeanor, had tears in his eyes. David stood slowly, humbled, almost embarrassed by the reaction. But the CEO walked toward him, shaking his hand firmly and saying, "David, a broken bar, that was extraordinary. Why didn't we know you could do this?" David simply smiled and replied, "Because no one ever asked." Word spread quickly. That night changed everything for David. The CEO personally invited him to play at future company events, and employees who once ignored him now greeted him with respect. But more importantly, it gave David something he thought he had lost forever: a pride in himself, not just as a janitor, not just as a struggling father, but as a man with a gift. When David went home that night, Emily was waiting up for him. He told her what happened, and she threw her arms around him, saying, "I knew you could do it, Dad." His eyes welled with tears as he realized she had always believed in him, even when he had forgotten how to believe in himself. And so, David kept playing, for his daughter, for himself, and sometimes, even for the company. He became living proof that no matter how invisible you feel, no matter how small others may make you seem, your gift can still shine when the time is right. So the next time you pass by someone who seems ordinary, who seems invisibly, remember David's story. Everyone has a gift. Everyone has a story. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room holds the loudest song. Would you like me to expand this even more into a scene-by-scene script style for a 100-minute YouTube video, with pacing, breaks, and dialogue, or keep it as this long continuous narrative?